Hey there, how are you doing today? Right now, I would like to share with you what I just realized. And this is kind of a big deal because I really feel like I had a breakthrough in understanding human beings and the way that we think, and a breakthrough in basically human psychology. And this might be basic stuff, right? This might be things that you already know about. But for me, this is something that's going to be very foundational in the way that I perceive the world from now on, in the way that I think about situations that come up, and especially when there's conflict that arises, I can kind of understand why there might be conflict. And the Holy Grail, the thing that I came to understand, is how often and in what situations people assume that they know what is true, or people assume that they know what's right or what actually happened. And that is the Holy Grail. That is that is it. That is like one of the most important things to really understand. It is knowing that our minds are flawed, that our brain jumps to conclusions. It says, hey, I know what happened. I know what really exists. Have you guys ever seen those optical illusions when you look at them and you think that you saw something, or you think that it's impossible, or your mind is playing tricks on you? So if you've ever had any experience with optical illusions, that's basically the principle that I'm talking about here, is that your mind fills in the gaps with information that was never actually given to you. So why am I talking about this? Why is this such a big deal? This is a big deal because when you assume that you know what's true, when you assume you know things that were never told to you, it can create conflict between you and other people, especially if it's just like an ideological argument or disagreement. Like, you're arguing about whether or not God exists, and there's no way that you can understand someone else and what they actually believe if you just assume right from the get-go that you know exactly what they already think, that you know exactly what their interpretations are of reality. So this is a big deal for me because I listen to that kind of discussion and arguments all the time from people that are making claims about reality. And it's not even just that. Sometimes it's like a real situation that takes place. Like let's get into current events in the country of the United States. There's a lot of police shootings that happen. There's a lot of police shooting unarmed black people. And in many of these situations, it's very easy to just assume that they're racist cops, which is probably true. A lot of the times there's probably a racial prejudice that exists. And hey, that is a key word, prejudice, prejudging someone, assuming that you know something about another person based on the color of their skin, based on their gender, based on their sexuality, based on the way they look, the way they sound, or where they're from. When you make assumptions about someone else, it might not be true, it might not be accurate. And now you might say, hey, what's the big deal about stereotyping people? What's the big deal about assuming that someone is stupid or dangerous or whatever your stereotype is? Well, it's not always a bad thing, but it can be if you act upon that thing. So anyway, back to the police example. What if a police shot a black person and it wasn't because that cop was a racist? What if it was because that person was actually a dangerous criminal who was about to shoot or harm the police officer, and they had to take deadly course of action and shoot the person? Now, the reason why I bring this up is because, hey, that's a hot topic right now, right? That's a big deal, and it's a problem. But I guess what I'm trying to say, I'm not trying to make a case saying that, there is no police brutality or anything. The case that I'm trying to make is that in many of these situations, we might assume that every new thing that happens, like for instance, if there's another police shooting tomorrow and another police officer shoots another black person, what I'm saying is we can't use the evidence that, because we just saw 5 or 10 or 20 other cases on the news, we can't say that because those other 10 or 20 cases were in fact racist cops, we can't say that the next one is going to be that situation. And that's kind of the idea that I'm coming from. I'm not trying to make a stand on these controversial topics, what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to say, hey, just because your mind puts together a solid case for why something is true, you have logical, well thought out points and reasons why you believe what you believe, it might not always be true. For example, imagine that you're in a relationship with a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, or whatever, and you assume that the other person is cheating on you. Now that's awful, right? If they actually are. And it's okay to assume or think that maybe they would be, that maybe they are. But sometimes it's better to keep that kind of stuff in your own head. You can always think about the possibilities that, hey, maybe something else is going on. But if you have a conviction, if you 100% believe without a doubt that the other person is cheating on you, just because you have a few pieces of evidence does not mean that it's actually true. And what might happen is you might confront the other person. You might say, hey, you're cheating on me. And then your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, and wife, whatever, is going to say back to you, no, I'm not. And then you're like, yeah, you are. And you're like, hey, look at this text message I saw. Hey, what about why were you gone late at night and you didn't tell me, blah, 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 blah. Okay, all the evidence is saying that you're cheated on me. Now, I want to say that in this situation that I'm making up in my head right now, this hypothetical story, the person who is accused of being cheated on, or who is accused of cheating, actually didn't cheat. But, sometimes you make assumptions about things, and when they're wrong, it causes conflicts, it causes misunderstanding between two people about what took place, what didn't take place. So, what I want to advise you of is to think about all of these situations that might come up in your life where you think you know what's right or what's true. Okay, so my point is to be aware of how your mind plays tricks on you. Be aware of how you jump to conclusions about things. This could be personal stuff. It could be about yourself. Sometimes you assume negative things about you, about your own life, and you assume that everyone else doesn't like you. You assume all these other things. Sometimes it's just not 100% accurate. Now, how do you know whether you're right or wrong? How do you know if you are making an assumption? You don't always know if you're making an assumption or if, but there are actual concrete things that can happen in real life, real situations, that, if you weren't actually there to see it happen or experience it, then everything is just based on storytelling, or based on, sometimes when we're talking about, hey, does God exist or does God not exist? That's not like a concrete thing that you can just, experience or see for yourself or whatever. When you're just debating or talking about these ideas that are just, there's nothing there. There's just thoughts. When you get into that kind of a thinking situation where it's just abstract ideas, there's not like any hard proof of one thing or another. So in those situations, it's just don't make an assumption about what other people are thinking about. But yeah, sometimes those big questions you just can't come to a conclusion on because, you don't know, it's just you don't know everything, right? And that's the big idea, is that you don't know everything. And that's how I live in my life. I always have the understanding that I don't know anything, or everything, I should say. How do you know when you do know something for real? How do you know? Well, you had to see it with your own eyes. You had to experience it through your senses. But even then, maybe you can still be fooled, right? Have you ever watched a magician do magic tricks, and you think that, hey, aren't what are some good magic tricks? Making something disappear. Well, your brain is going to play a trick on you. You're like, hey, I just saw this man on stage have a ball or something in his hand. He put a handkerchief over it. He took it off and the ball was gone. The guy has magical powers. He made something disappear. Now, in that situation, you're making the assumption that it's what really happened. Even though the evidence that your eyes saw it happen is telling you that it happened, there's something going on behind the scenes, information you don't have, and there's always that possibility for every situation in life, that there's always the possibility that you don't know something. So maybe you need to assume that there's always something that you don't know, instead of assuming that you do know something. That's, I'm going to stop confusing everybody. Listen, I'm just working through all this stuff. I'm just thinking about it. I'm not trying to confuse you. I'm not trying to go really deep. I'm not trying to be controversial. So, I'm just trying to say that this idea of making assumptions applies all across our lives in various situations. So, let me know what you think about this. Is this too deep, or do you like this? Alright, let me know in the comments. I'll see you in my next video. Give the video a thumbs up if you can. Share it maybe. Whatever you can. Thank you so much for subscribing to my channel, guys. I love you. See you in my next video.